Between the southern tip of India and the island of Sri Lanka lies a shallow, winding ridge of sand. According to the Ramayana epic, this is where one of the most significant engineering projects in mythological history took place. Lord Ram's army needed to cross an entire ocean to reach a distant fortified coastline and rescue his wife, Sita. To build this bridge, he relied on the Vanara army, a legion of fiercely loyal, incredibly powerful monkey warriors capable of moving mountains. They ripped massive boulders from the earth and hurled them into the sea. These stones didn't sink. Because they were inscribed with the name Ram, they floated on the water's surface, slowly locking together to form a continuous path. In an operation this massive, the math was simple. Your value to the army was entirely dependent on your physical strength and the sheer tonnage you could carry. When you are standing in front of an ocean-sized problem, a single person's effort can feel statistically invisible. Watching the giant apes heave boulders into the crashing waves was a tiny, fragile squirrel. Looking at the immense task, this tiny creature felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to help Lord Ram, even though its physical capacity was virtually zero. Simply stepping onto that chaotic, heavy-lifting construction site was an act of rebellion against the logic of brute force. Lacking the muscle to lift stones, the squirrel invented its own engineering technique. It started diving into the loose soil, tumbling rapidly until the wet sand coated every inch of its fur. Then, sprinting to the water's edge, it would vigorously shake its tiny body, depositing a few grains of sand into the vast ocean. Over and over, back and forth. Roll, run, shake. There was no hesitation, and there were no breaks. This microscopic dust was falling into the sea, under the shadows of towering warriors and boulders the size of houses. The squirrel couldn't deliver volume, so it offered the only resource it possessed: relentless, exhausting repetition. Eventually, the massive lifting ground to a halt. The Vanara warriors paused, staring down at the water's edge. A booming wave of laughter erupted down the shoreline as the giant apes watched this tiny creature tumbling in the dirt. To the monkeys, the math was hilarious. A few grains of sand would never, ever fill an ocean. The physical output was entirely useless to the mission. The squirrel didn't stop. It didn't pause to explain itself or seek validation. It just kept running back to the sand. That laughter reveals an assumption we still make today, that only outputs large enough to be measured actually matter. The roaring laughter suddenly cut off. A sharp silence fell over the beach as Lord Ram himself stepped out toward the water. He reached down past the giant apes and scooped the exhausted squirrel into his palms. He addressed his army. If you compare the massive volume of boulders to a handful of sand, the apes clearly win. But that's the wrong equation. The mighty Vanaras used only a fraction of their strength to lift those rocks. The squirrel was giving absolutely everything it had. Its entire physical capacity was poured into those few grains of sand. Ram redefined the value of work, shifting the metric from physical volume to the absolute purity of intention, the bhavana. Smiling down at the tiny laborer, Lord Ram lightly ran his fingers along the squirrel's back, blessing its total dedication. According to the legend, his touch left 3 distinct white lines, a mark carried by Indian palm squirrels to this very day. This story exposes the flaw in feeling too small to try. Impact isn't always about the scale of the result. When your commitment is absolute, even the smallest action holds immense weight. If this touched your heart, tap the like button. Comment Jai Shri Ram